Hello and welcome back. This is Philip Riley from the Guildhall at SMU, Cohort 15, Level Designer. Today we're going to look at Kismet. This is the Kismet tutorial part 2. Today's date is January 26th, 2011, and we are using UDK version December 2010. We've already set up a toggle switch that controls two lights, and we can alternate between the green and the red light. And now we're going to take those lights and we're going to add a countdown timer to them. So let's get started in that. All of our work today is going to be done in Kismet itself and not within the world editor. So let's bring up Kismet by hitting the K, or if you already have it open and it's minimized, let's open that window. Here's our current setup with our toggles and our trigger. I'm going to grab all this and just reposition it, and then move this one trigger to start it over here. We're going to add a little more logic to it now to have the countdown timer. Computers can count, but we got to tell them what to do. We need to tell it where to start, where to end, and how much to count by. We also need to let it display that information back to the player so we can see what we're doing. So I'm going to add a couple of pieces to our setup so we can see that in game. Let's see. First, we're going to need a log. This log is how you output data to the debug log for the game, and you can also have data come out to the screen for the player. I'll leave that there. We're also going to need a condition where we're going to compare two integers to do our countdown. And then finally, we're going to need, right there, a subtraction. This lets us build a value and count down from it, decrement it until we get to the bottom of where we're counting, 0, and that should be all we need. So first, let's think about this. This log is what outputs data to the screen. If I put the used button here, right now it's not going to do anything. There's no data being assigned. But if I change this log and I say, let's make it a string, and I add a string variable to it, I can say the string value is test message. If I jump out real fast and go into the level editor and hit play from here, you'll see when I hit the trigger, I'll get a test message on my display. Ready? Bam, there it is. It's pretty straightforward. Back in Kismet though, we're going to change this. I'm going to go ahead and delete that test message. We don't want that. We want the log to show us an integer, and that's going to be our value that we count down. Okay? So first, let's think about this. The flow of logic is we're going to have a number, and we're going to start there. We're going to display that number on screen, and then we're going to compare it to the other value. If the value is low enough, if it's at 0, then we want it to trigger the light. So what's going to happen is we're going to have that number displayed, and the number is going to come to this comparison math. And if it's equal, we're going to toggle the light. But we're not quite there yet. While it's doing that, while our A value is greater than B, we need to subtract from it. So let's drag this over here. Now, here's where it gets a little complicated, but it's not too hard. We need our initial value. So let's just right-click here on this integer and say a new integer variable. This is the value where we're going to start counting from. I'm going to give that a value of 5. This value is what we're also going to compare to. So we want this A to have a reference to this 5. Okay? I'll drag that, make a little better position there. And finally, when we subtract it, we want it to compare this A over here. We're going to subtract the value B from it. And we want the result of that math, that operation, to come back here and change this value. So when it subtracts, it'll change, say, 5 to 4. This 4 will get written back to this value, which will display on screen. So we need to have our B here. Our B that we want to compare it to, this B is 0. When it gets to 0, we're good. I'm going to leave that value alone. And finally, the value you want to subtract from it is going to be an integer, and I want that integer value to be 1. I'm going to change it down here in the properties of that object. So now it's updated. So if we go back into the level and play it from here, you'll see that's going to count down, and, well, let's see. Oh, you know what I forgot? I forgot one more step. Let's jump back into Kismet. I forgot the last piece. We need to loop it back to itself. So when it finishes its math, it updates the log, and then continues the process. This loop will flow until we're done. Come back to the level, let's play it again, and we'll see what happens. We'll see that, whoa, it counted down, and the light changed, and it happened so quickly. Well, why is that? If we look at Kismet, we see that this is set up, and this loop flows. Kismet triggers on every cycle. There's 1,000 of them per second. So this is much faster than we need it to be. We need to slow it down. We need to add a delay. The computer is currently counting in cycles and not in seconds. So what we're going to do is we're going to add a delay right here. After it writes out the number, I'm going to right click and say set active delay. The value is 1. We can change this to any value you want, and this is in seconds. So now we got a 1 second delay here. If you notice, on any of these connections, I can add a delay. I could add a delay on this half if I wanted to. I could put a half a second delay here and a half a second delay on the original side, and that would still give us our 1 second delay. Oh, typoed that. Let's change that back to 0.5. Now if I go play that in level, you'll see what it looks like. Play from here, and we're going to count down. And there we go, and the light changed. Now there was a slight pause there, because once it got to 0, it still had a delay. So let's move this delay to someplace else. I'm going to remove this delay. Ready? Set active delay to 0, and that will clear it off that connection. And likewise here, I'm going to set the active delay back to 0, and it's gone. If I put the delay on this part of the math, we'll get a better effect. Now let's try that again. There we go. That's what we want. That's perfect. All right. Now, there's one more piece we need to add here. And if you haven't thought of it, let me show you what it is. The problem we have right now, while we are working, if a player hits this trigger again, they can reset it. Now see, they restart it, but the value stays where it was, which doesn't really make much sense. Or in other words, if this sequence counts down, they hit it again, it goes back to 0. So in our next video, we're going to address how to fix this problem.